Hi guys, in this video I'm going to install vCenter Server Appliance, the VCSA 6.0 in my home lab environment. Before I do that, let's have a look at the requirements for the vCenter Server Appliance 6.0. In vSphere 6, vCenter Server has gone through some major architecture changes. You can deploy vCenter Server Appliance on a host running ESXi 5.0 or later, and your system must meet the hardware and the software requirements. The hardware requirements are classified into 4 categories which provide clear information on the number of CPUs and the memory required. For a tiny environment, you need 2 virtual CPUs and 8 gigs of RAM, versus for a large environment, 16 CPUs and 32 gigs of RAM is required. Also important to note here that if you're deploying an embedded model where the vCenter server and the platform services controller are on the same VM, you must add the hardware requirements. So as an example, for a small environment, the total number of CPUs required would be 4 plus 2 equal to 6, and the memory would be 16 plus 2, 18 gigs of RAM would be required for embedded model. With regards to storage requirements, again the same classification applies, and here are the details for each of that environment, as well as for if you're using external platform services controller. To meet the software requirements, you need to install the client integration plugin, which is really a HTML installer for the Windows server or Windows VM from where you will be installing the vCenter Server Appliance. As stated here, it is important to note that you cannot deploy a vCenter Server Appliance by using the vSphere client or the vSphere web client. With regards to database, vCenter Server Appliance is bundled with Postgres database that is capable to support up to 1,000 hosts and 10,000 virtual machines. So this is all about the requirements, and you can go to this vSphere installation and setup guide document published by VMware for vSphere 6.0 to read more regarding the requirements. So one last thing I would like to mention before jumping to the lab. If you run into issues with installing the client integration plugin for a Firefox browser, this is a KB article, and here it talks about the 2 settings that you need to change to resolve the issue. And for Chrome, this KB article talks about the issues and the steps how to resolve them. Please go through these 2 KB articles if you have issues with client integration plugin. Alright, so let's go to the lab and install the vCenter Server Appliance 6.0. Alright, so I'm going to install vCenter Server Appliance 6.0. Double click the vcsa-setup.html, and I'm using Firefox as my browser, and following the KB article I did make changes to these 2 settings. So just click install and follow the wizard. And so accepting the end user license agreement, go next. So now provide the information for the ESXi host where the vCenter will be installed. So I've added the information for the ESXi host and the username and password. So once I hit next here, it will try to validate and that it can reach to the ESXi host. So now provide a name for the appliance and the password for it. And hit next. So here it gives the options whether to install an embedded install, which means the vCenter server and the platform services controller will be deployed into one VM. So that's what I'm going to do in my lab, in my home lab environment. you can go for external deployment depending upon your need. And now for the SSO, I'm going to create a new SSO. So provide a password for the administrator login. All right, so click next here. So as we looked in about the hardware requirements about the size of the appliance, this is where that needs to be configured depending upon your environment. You can select tiny, small, and medium or large. And as you can see, the requirements would change. For a large, you need 16 vCPUs and 32 gigs of RAM of memory and 450 GB of the disk space. So I'm going to go for a tiny in my home lab environment. For storage, I'm going to select my NFS data store, and I would enable the thin disk, although for a vCenter server I would not recommend that option in production. So with regards to the database, I'm going to use embedded Postgres database. So next, with regards to the network settings, I have already added all the information here. And I'm not going to enable SSH at this time. So just going to click finish to complete this visit, and the installation would start. So the installation is proceeding and it is going to take some time. I'm going to pause here and come back once the installation completes. So the installation completed successfully. Alright, so let's log into the vCenter server using the administrator at vSphere.local account. So we are successfully able to, I'm successfully able to log into the vCenter. So what I'll do is I'll do some basic tasks of create a data center, create a cluster, and add the two ESXi hosts so that they can be managed with this vCenter server. So both the ESXi hosts are added to the vCenter server, and this concludes the video for today. Thanks for watching.